Announcements.
Radio 1.
Spectrum wants to hear your views. You can SMS at any time during the show. Type Spectrum, leave a space, type in your contribution and name, then send it to 7197. Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. I'm your host, Edmond Kizito. On Spectrum tonight, scrutiny of the Public Order Management Bill. Does it conform to the Constitution and associated freedoms? Public hearings of the proposed Public Order Management Bill commenced today, with the Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament taking views from several stakeholders, including the Uganda Human Rights Commission. This bill, whose objective is ostensibly to ensure better organized public gatherings, was tabled in Parliament in October, but it has since come under attack by those who believe that it's not in tandem with the Constitution of Uganda and the rights this Constitution seeks to uphold. The government, on the other hand, insists that public gatherings must be managed and that the bill is simply proposing what is provided for in other democracies that Ugandans, especially the opposition, are always singing about and are singling out as better democracies. Today, the Uganda Human Rights Commission presented its views and opposed the bill from the start, saying it threatens the fundamental human rights, especially the right to peacefully assemble or even demonstrate. The government, on the other hand, has repeatedly said none of these rights is absolute and that it's only expected that the state protects the rights of others which might be infringed upon by those wishing to exercise their rights to assemble or demonstrate. So Spectrum will continue to gauge the views of different stakeholders to establish if at all this law is relevant or it is simply an attempt to stifle dissent and freedoms, as some pundits and human rights organizations have stated. Our guests tonight, well, people who would know, Mr. Dan Ngabirano, Senior Partner at Development Law Associates, specializing in human rights law. You're most welcome, Mr. Ngabirano.
Thank you. Good evening, listeners.
We're also joined by Ms. Sophie Kyagulanyi, Policy Analyst for Governance at Actionaid Uganda. You're most welcome, Sophie.
Thank you. Good evening, listeners.
We're also joined by Roselyn Karugonjo-Segawa, Director Monitoring and Inspections at the Uganda Human Rights Commission. You're most welcome, Roselyn.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, viewers. Listeners, sorry.
Well, viewers as well, because we are also on the internet. You can watch Spectrum videos of the internet. Find it at the website, on the website, Radio 1 FM 90 website. Click on Spectrum videos and you can download it. Roselyn, you presented today and you come from the Uganda Human Rights Commission, which is financed by the government. Why are you opposed to this bill?
First of all, the Uganda Human Rights Commission welcomes the objectives of the bill. We believe it's important to have a law regulating public demonstrations, which is vital in a democracy. So we welcome the bill. We're just concerned about various issues and various ways in which the bill could trample on certain rights. We feel that the spirit of the bill should recognize the need to facilitate rather than hinder demonstrations, and particularly we are concerned with various aspects of the bill relating to definitions of political organization, public place, public meeting, the powers of the Inspector General of Police and other officers, the requirements for notice, the use of firearms, the responsibilities on the organizers and participants and gazetted areas, and I would be happy to go into detail in each one of them, but we believe that the bill is more of prohibitive than facilitating public demonstrations, which we had hoped. And as many people in this country may know, through a consultative process, the Uganda Human Rights Commission developed guidelines on public demonstrations in Uganda, which we had hoped would be the foundation for such a law, in which we clearly outlined the various roles of the people who participate in public demonstrations and processions, the role for the police, the role for the organizers, and the role for the participants. So that is why maybe you think we're opposed to the bill. But we do welcome the bill. We're just not happy with the content, some of the content.
Well, some government officials said they consulted, they actually asked you to drop the bill, they took it away, paintbrushes certain sections, and then you began to differ with them. Where are the clauses?
It's not true that we drafted this bill. That is absolutely not true. And I want the public to know that we had no hand in drafting the public order management bill. What we did have a hand in, and maybe what people are confusing, is that we did draft the guidelines on public demonstrations in Uganda. It followed a very consultative process. We had colleagues from civil society, colleagues from the Uganda Police Force, Uganda Prison Service. We had political party representation even there as far back as 2007. And basically, the guidelines not only affirm the rights of citizens to assemble and demonstrate, but also provides for the role and responsibilities of the various actors, such as the role of the police, organizers of demonstrations, procedures for police notifications, not permission, the use of force, and the role of planners of demonstrations. So we had hoped, as I said before, that these guidelines would eventually be translated into binding regulations and should have been instrumental in providing guidance to the public order management bill. As an organization or as an institution, the National Human Rights Institution of Uganda, we are interested in ensuring that people's rights and freedoms are protected. So there is no way we would have drafted a bill that takes away from that.
And nobody should say you drafted it?
No, we never drafted it.
Sophie, talk to us about your opposition to this bill.
Our listeners, Actionaid, together with other civil society organizations, are actually concerned about this bill. But their concern does not stem from the fact that the bill has been introduced. It stems from the content within the bill. They are agreeing that it's necessary for Uganda to come up with a law that will allow and would guide the government in managing publics, especially when the publics are coming together. But where the law is going to infringe and limit the enjoyment of certain rights and freedoms, especially the civil liberties within, then that's where the concern comes from. So the object of the bill is welcome, but the content within the bill itself has a lot of things that need to be changed. So it's from that background that Actionaid has joined another group of civil society organizations who are codenaming themselves as the Police Accountability Group, Reform and Accountability Group, and are saying that certain provisions within the bill need to be changed for it to be recognized as a bill relevant in a democratic society, which is Uganda.
If you had to remove some clauses, what percentage would you take out?
A bigger percentage of the bill, because...
Well, give us a percentage, 70, 80, 90, 40?
If there are 10 provisions in that bill, then 7 of them are actually needing amending.
So it's 70, you'll give it 30%?
Yeah.
Give us some flagship clauses that you think are obnoxious.
The key clause is the clause that even Rose alluded to, and that's clause 6, which is the meaning of the public meeting. It's, if I am to read it verbatim, it defines what a public meeting and says that a public meeting means a gathering, assembly, caucus, procession, or demonstration of 3 or more persons in any public road as defined in the Traffic and Road Safety Act, all other public place or premises wholly or partly open to the air. That is everything. People come together for various reasons. People come together either as gatherings, assemblies, processions, or even demonstrating. But it even goes ahead and says that in open air, at which the principles, policy, actions, failure of any government, political party, political organization, whether or not that party or organization is registered under any law, are discussed. We come together in government for as Ugandans to discuss policies of government, to discuss principles of government, to discuss where our government is not performing well, to even feedback our government and tell them what they should have done, probably in a much more better way. You know, as an accountability perspective, we have a role and we return the feedback to the government. If this bill is passed, we will not be able to do that.
We'll have a quiet country, no demonstrations, so people can work.
Yes, but we are coming together in another gathering, not in a demonstration. The bill doesn't allow you to do that. It goes ahead to say that where you come together, in a place open to the air, you hold to form a pressure group. Pressure groups are formed in various forms for various reasons. To submit petitions to any person, or to mobilize or demonstrate support for all opposition to the views, principles, policy, actions, or omissions of any person or body of persons or institutions, including any government administration or government institution. Meaning that if we came together, mobilized ourselves, formed a pressure group, wrote a petition to submit to the ambassador probably of this country, this bill would not allow us to do that. We've been mobilizing citizens as now a practitioner's perspective, as civil society. We've been mobilizing citizens of this country to voice either their concerns or even their needs to their leaders, you know, either to even demand accountability. And they've submitted petitions to parliament, to district leaders on various forms, even to the Chief Justice himself. This bill will not allow us to do that. With such provisions, it will not allow us to do that. That's why we are concerned.
Then give us the roots of your opposition to this bill.
Well, for me, right from the start, I would like to say that 100% the bill is fraud, in my opinion.
You give it 0%, she gave it 30%. For you, it's
100%, 0%. First of all, we do appreciate, I want to add my voice to my colleagues, we do appreciate the need for regulation of, say, assemblies and demonstrations. But again, when you look at the spirit of the bill, the objectives are quite progressive in as far as they attempt to sort of underline the expected standards for which such a bill should comply with in terms of promoting the partnership between, say, organizers of the demonstrations with the police, in terms of actuating the right to freely demonstrate and express one's opinion. But like many colleagues have said, the devil is in the detail. When you get down to the bill, there is, in my opinion, no clause that one would look at and say this is a progressive clause or this is a clause that accords with the set objectives. And significantly so, in my opinion, the bill is a plain attempt to reclaim the powers of the IGP that were
the Inspector General of Police.
Yeah, the Inspector General of Police that were swept away in Muwanga Kivumbi, which was a case again that challenged at the time Section 32(2) of the Police Act that gave the IGP similar overwhelming powers to regulate and sort of permit all public gatherings. And the bill introduces exactly the same thing. So from the beginning, it's actually potential and constitutional. Of course, we are not a court to pronounce it unconstitutional, but it's very potential and constitutional. There's a very high likelihood that in the event it's passed, the next day you're likely to see activists petition the Constitutional Court. But significantly so too, the bill, by sort of trying to reintroduce what was already decided by the court, goes against the spirit of the Constitution, in particular Article 92, that obligates the sanctity of first of all, it provides for the sanctity of court decisions. They cannot just be done away with by any other organ. So it's problematic already in that way, but again, also when you look at the provisions, as my colleagues have pointed out, they are very limitative and contrary to the spirit of the Constitution.
So it's basically unconstitutional.
Potential and constitutional.
Potentially unconstitutional.
Yeah.
Roselyn, can you give us an idea about, in case it passed, what would happen potentially?
In case it passed, it would really it would be in conflict with the principles of a democratic society, which allow for criticism of government policies, and actions, and the right to petition in the event that there is a divergent view. Of course, it really goes against the spirit of our constitution, where you encourage people to participate in decisions that affect them. If people are not happy with certain decisions of government, they should have a forum where they can express this opinion. So in the event that this kind of bill passes, it will definitely limit people's freedom of expression, of opinion, of assembly, of association, among many other rights. It is most likely, as Dan said, possible to challenge it in a constitutional court, but would not want to go that far. We would want Parliament to do its bit in line with the Constitution, balance the rights of citizens against maintenance of law, order, and at the end of the day provide us with a law that will facilitate demonstrations and assemblies. You can't wish them away. They are part of any democracy, or even of any country. You can't just wish them away, and that's why the Constitution granted them. So we are hoping that this law would do that kind of thing for us.
Do we really need a law to do what the kind of thing that they're saying they're bringing it for?
Given the situation, the fact that on the whole, let me speak on the whole as a country, and when I speak we, I mean the country. On the whole, we are not quite sure how to exercise this right.
The right to demonstrate.
The right to demonstrate.
Yes.
Some citizens have used the opportunity to loot, to steal, to destroy, and basically commit crimes in the process. They think that that's the opportunity to do those kinds of things. So on the whole, we would need some kind of guidance and some kind of regulation as to how we conduct ourselves as we carry out this demonstration. But the law or the guidelines should have it. The spirit of that law should know that the state or the nation or the country, the state particularly, has to regard it as a positive duty on their part to facilitate these kinds of demonstrations and not prohibit them and not restrict them. It has to come from that angle. So we may need to educate people about how to actually demonstrate and assemble and actually, advocate or criticize government policies. But at the same time, in response, because I believe that in a sense, maybe this is a response to the problems that the police experienced in previous demonstrations where some people were killed. Remember, in the Mabira demonstration, some people were killed. So maybe it's in a response to kind of control. But again, you cannot be too restrictive. People do have to express their opinion. People do have to assemble. People do have to criticize government policy. Otherwise, then what kind of government is that if you can't be criticized, and if people cannot even express themselves by demonstrating? So we do have to find that balance.
Well, and that's someone who works for the government, the Uganda Human Rights Commission.
The Human Rights Commission is a constitutional body. It's a national human rights institution.
Well, this is Spectrum on Radio 1. Tonight, scrutiny of the Public Order Management Bill. Does it conform to the Constitution and associated freedom? We'll go for a break. We'll be back.
Is your internet provider turning your world upside down? Broadband Company offers fast and reliable internet solutions. And for the first 100 subscribers this month, we offer zero connection fees. Save up to 400,000. For more information on these offers, call toll-free 0800 222 111.
Broadband Company, more than you expect.
Let the sunlight in.
Good morning, sunshine of my life. You look happy today.
I am. I came in here and I saw there was a whole pile of washing to do.
But I thought you didn't like doing the washing.
No, I love it. Anything else you need washed?
Sunlight 2-in-1 with added fabric softener. Smells so good, you want to use it again and again.
Let the sunlight in.
Sunlight 2-in-1. Sunlight clean, sunlight fresh.
Sunlight in. Happiness is all around. Let the sunlight
John, Mike and I, we go back a bit. We knew John at the beginning, working for someone else. But he was different. He had vision, saw opportunities. He started working towards his goal, opened his own garage, and worked, learning the hard way. His reputation spread. Trust, consistency, quality. Soon people were coming to him from all parts. He made himself and his whole street prosper, and also helped friends, seeing potential in people and helping them on. But John never shouts about all his success. He's just who he is. Special.
So here's to men like John, who make a difference, who enjoy Nile Special, the rich, satisfying taste from the source. Nile Special. You've earned it.
Not for sale to persons under 18.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90 is brought to you by Stanbic Bank.
Welcome back on Spectrum. Tonight, scrutiny of the Public Order Management Bill. Does it conform to the Constitution and associated freedoms? Our guests tonight, Mr. Dan Ngabirano, Senior Partner at Development Law Associates, specializing in human rights law, Ms. Sophie Kyagulanyi, Policy Analyst for Governance at Actionaid Uganda, and Ms. Roselyn Karugonjo-Segawa, Director of Monitoring and Inspections at the Uganda Human Rights Commission. You'll be able to call in later and contribute to this discussion. Sophie, what is the ideal? What kind of bill would you present if you're given a chance to write it yourself?
If we were given a chance to write it ourselves, there are certain clauses in there that will shape a little differently. Specifically, the clause that relates with interpretation would shape differently in the context that we'll use certain already defined terms in our laws. For instance, political parties are already defined in the Political Parties Organizations Act. There's no reason why we wouldn't adopt the same definition. A public place is already defined in the Penal Code. There's no reason why we shouldn't adopt the same definition. You know, the bill is now bringing in something already defined and defining it differently. We would also consider the decisions of the court, the Constitutional Court, as he alluded. The Constitutional Court has already decided on what the duty of the police should be in a public gathering. It has decided that the duty of the police is actually to protect and facilitate peaceful assemblies without any discrimination. But here, the bill is moving beyond facilitating and protecting peaceful assemblies to knowing what you're going to be coming together for. And in knowing what you're going to be coming together for, it now has the power, as per the bill, to stop you if it knows a certain reason or probably it's against any particular interest. Then the police would stop you, which would go against the powers of the police in the Police Act and even as per that judgment. And we already know that our Constitution does not allow Parliament to come up with any law which law would affect a decision already made by any court in this country. So coming up with this law and enacting it by Parliament would be wrong for our Parliament. So if we were to change it, some of this would be changing.
Briefly talk to us about possible abuse gaps. How did abuse, look at this week that has happened, had a demonstration the other day, a typical week, what would happen if it was passed?
If it was passed, for instance, I'll use an example of use of firearms. The bill gives the police the right to use firearms, and it sets certain guidelines on when it can use firearms. But these guidelines are limited. There's already another law that defines for us a much more allowable situation where you can use a firearm. But the bill is selecting a few, and it can use a firearm. And we already know that there are situations in this country where the police has used firearms and has shot at innocent citizens, for instance. So that would be an ideal situation.
So more people could be killed in
More people could be killed because they are allowed now to use the firearm where they think it's just an opinion of an officer thinking that this could be criminal. So he uses his firearm and shoots.
He's protected by the law.
By the law.
Dan, talk to us about the ideal bill that you have, even though you give it 0%, and then some abuse gaps. How would it be a bad thing?
Well, actually, I don't believe in an ideal bill per se, because, as Sophie said already, there are laws in a